Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Love with Megan podcast, talking all things holistic well-being and mind, body, soul, healing and expansion with me, your host, Megan Cooper. Hello, my loves. Well, this is exciting. My first solo podcast episode. Now, for the first one, it seemed only really logical and appropriate and natural that I would speak about my initiation into holistic health and natural healing. And if you've been following me for a long time, you will know that this came in the form of being diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, otherwise known as PCOS, in 2017, and going about on a 5-month crusade to rebalance my hormones, heal my body, and get my period back. For those of you who don't know, PCOS is a women's hormone-related condition affecting 1 in 10 women in the UK, and statistics say it might even be 1 in 5. It's the biggest cause of infertility in women, and often women don't know they have it until they either come off the contraceptive pill or other forms of contraception, or they're trying to get pregnant. It can cause irregular or no periods, and come with a load of different side effects which are hormones-based, whether that is bad skin, fatigue, low energy, low libido, issues with gaining weight, hair in awkward places. And because our hormones are such a complex ecosystem, it can be difficult to treat, leaving so many women feeling disempowered around their health, their hormones, and their bodies. In this podcast, I'm going to be discussing what that journey of healing looked like for me. From the diagnosis, where I was told that there was nothing that I could do for this condition, knowing nothing to little about health, but setting myself up on a holistic healing regimen, working intuitively with my body to make major adjustments in my diet and lifestyle, restoring balance to my body, and reversing my condition entirely. Yes, ladies, since I got my period back, I haven't had any further issues with PCOS since. All of which took me into a deeper relationship with my body and with my life in general, and inspired me to go on to study holistic health and nutrition. I now work as a holistic health coach, supporting women in their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being and evolution. So clearly this podcast is here to serve anybody who's been diagnosed with or is managing PCOS and interested in how you might be able to benefit your body, especially in a holistic capacity. But it's also for you if you are suffering from any other form of hormone imbalance, maybe that is endometriosis or some of the other hormone symptoms that I've mentioned before, ovarian cysts, irregular, painful, missing or no periods, as well as other symptoms such as low libido, acne, weight gain or loss. Our hormones affect us on so many different levels, so symptoms can really vary from person to person. Regardless of how your symptoms are presenting themselves, there might well be information in here for you, considering that I'm covering ways to generally bring your hormones back into balance, and things that worked for me. This podcast also serves as a case study for anybody who is interested in taking a holistic approach to your health, by which I mean looking at how your entire lifestyle is affecting your well-being, which is not something which is always taken into account within our traditional medical system, but it is something that is becoming much more widely spread and accepted. Just witnessing how stress is impacting the health of our nation, we can't really afford not to take a holistic approach to our health. We can no longer hide from the truth that our entire lifestyle affects our health on a physical, cellular level. And this is great news, guys, because it means that we can take some radical self-responsibility and ownership in the area of our health and really empower ourselves around our health and our bodies. So even if you don't struggle with your hormones, it's still a really good listen in order to really take ownership of everything that's happening with your body, develop a deeper relationship to your cycle, and get you excited about womanhood in general. So why is this stuff important? Now, as women, I don't feel like we are taught nearly enough about our bodies, our hormones, or our cycles. If we were, I truly believe that we wouldn't have the common levels of hormonal imbalance that we do within our society. Many women have a really poor relationship with their cycle. You know, I hear women all the time saying, "Oh, I just hate my period so much." What a travesty this is, right? You know, we have access to all of this power and all of this magic within our bodies. And it's such a shame that women aren't exposed to this kind of education earlier on so that we can really understand how to work with our bodies rather than against them. And when we understand how to work with our bodies, ladies, it all gets to be quite a juicy, pleasurable experience and a massive voyage of self-discovery. You will literally be wowed by your body when you understand your health and your hormones and your cycle. Trust me. I also know that when you are suffering from a hormonal imbalance, it can feel a really challenging, disheartening, emotional, frustrating, and downright lonely place to be. So I really want this podcast and me sharing my personal story to be some comfort and support if you are going through it. You know, just to know that you are not alone, that there are so many women out there who are also struggling with similar issues in whatever way that is presenting itself uniquely to them. And I feel you so hard, and I'm here with you. And I really want you to feel empowered by this podcast, even if that feels quite foreign to you right now. And I will say as well, as a disclaimer, that this is simply my journey. Every single woman's body is different. What your body needs might be different from the next person. What feels good for you might be different from the next person. I am simply talking about my experience and what that process looked like for me. It's not a healing regimen. It's not a way to diagnose yourselves. I'm certainly not trying to take away any other recommendations of any other healthcare professional with whom you've been receiving or discussing treatment. And ladies, if you are experiencing any hormonal issues, do consult a doctor. Do get a proper diagnosis so that you can receive the support and treatment that you might need. So let's dive in, ladies. So back in mid-2016, my periods started to get fewer and far between until eventually they stopped. And praise the Lord, because who actually wants periods? I certainly didn't. I didn't think too much about it, to be honest. People, when I brought it up, said that it could be stress. Likely, I was extremely stressed in the job that I had at the time. And it wasn't until I lost said job that I took myself to the doctor because, I suddenly had all this spare time on my hands. And I casually went into her office and said, it's probably nothing, but for the past 8 months, I haven't had a cycle and I just wanted to check that I wasn't dying. It's probably normal. She very much thought that it was something, and it was definitely not normal. She asked me if I'd experienced a range of other side effects. Had I gained weight? Yes. Actually, I had gained about 2 stone, which I annoyingly couldn't shift despite caning it at the gym and just trying to eat salad. Had I experienced acne? Oh yes, I had really bad skin a few years before when I came off the pill, but I blitzed it with Roaccutane and it was all fine. Did I have any hair growth in weird places? Oh yeah, come to mention of it, I kind of did. She provisionally diagnosed me with PCOS, something I'd never heard of. And to be honest, I was fairly shocked because I'd arrived at the GP's office just expecting her to say, oh yes, it's fine, maybe just stress, goodbye. But she said that I would need to go for scans and tests to verify the diagnosis. Later that week, I had scans and an ultrasound, which showed that I had over 30 cysts on one of my ovaries and showed that the other one was just, for some unknown reason, not working. Tests showed that my hormone levels were imbalanced, all of which was enough evidence to suggest to the GP that I did have PCOS. But I needed to go and see a specialist endocrinologist in order to confirm the diagnosis and talk about my treatment options. Now, at this point in time, I was still kind of reeling from the shock because when you're diagnosed with something that you've never heard of and you assume that you were fine and that there was nothing wrong with you, and to be honest, not getting periods was quite convenient, it does pack a little bit of a punch. Now, a month or so later, I went to go and see the specialist endocrinologist who looked through my file, looked at my results, and she confirmed the GP's diagnosis of PCOS. She outlined the increased risks of developing ovarian cancer, diabetes, obesity, and a range of other things. And as PCOS was untreatable, she recommended that I went back onto the contraceptive pill to restore a monthly bleed and just shut everything down so that at least it didn't get worse. She asked me if I was trying to get pregnant, which I responded to no. I was 27 and single and living on the other side of the world in Australia. She told me that PCOS can reduce your fertility or lead even to infertility in some cases. As I wasn't ovulating, with one of my ovaries covered in cysts and the other one just not working, I wouldn't currently be able to get pregnant. If this was the case when I decided that I did want children, I could come back in to discuss IVF and other options. Now, this was a lot. You know, as I said, being 27 on the other side of the planet, being single, certainly not in a position to start a family. It really wasn't something that I'd given much thought. However, when this option starts to be taken away from you, it suddenly gets a little bit real. And certainly it didn't feel good to have to just go back onto the contraceptive pill to shut everything down and then have to think about fertility treatment. Like, what? I asked her too what I could do about my weight gain because, as I said, I'd gained over 2 stone and I didn't feel good within my body. She said that I might always struggle with my weight. I left her office feeling like there was very little that I could do for my body, like my body was working against me, and like I just didn't have any options. The words untreatable and incurable had been bounded around. That, my friends, is a very hard pill to swallow indeed. But despite all of these disempowering narratives and things that were being told to me about the way that my body was and what the future looked like for my body, I just somehow felt that this was not my truth. Now, some people might call that denial or shock. For me, it just felt like it just didn't land. It wasn't going to be my way forward. It just feels like a knowing. The voice of my intuition, the voice of my body, the voice of my warrior feminine saying, no, this is not how it's going to be. This is not my story. This is not my narrative. I didn't fully hear this inner voice, but I definitely felt it. Something had awoken. Saying that, of course, I left the hospital and had a big, big cry. It was midday in Australia. Everyone that I knew and loved would be asleep back in the UK. Everyone that I knew in Australia would be at work. Now again, this was an absolute divine gift. Because even though I felt really alone in that moment, I really registered that I was the only person who could help me right now. It was all on me. I had to deal with this. I had to take full responsibility for how I was going to move forward. It wasn't on anyone else. It was all on me. I had to take full ownership, radical self-responsibility. There is something somewhat empowering about being in the shitter and being by yourself. It's the fast track teaching to, if we're going to take something on, we have to be in the driving seat. Self-empowerment 101. I allowed myself to cry. Then I took a deep breath, put on my big girl pants, and galvanized some energy to pick myself up and wonder what the fuck I was going to do now. Now, I want to make you extremely aware that at this point, I knew nothing about health. Sure, I'd worked at multiple yoga studios, I'd managed a fitness studio, and I was teaching yoga, but I knew nothing about actual health and wellness. To me, if you were slim, you were healthy. Health equaled calories. A low-calorie ready meal was healthy in my books. I didn't really manage my stress properly. I didn't really understand the importance of rest or sleep. Yet even I could take an inventory of my past 10 years of life, witnessing the diet of alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, a lot of partying. And even though I was so shocked at getting a diagnosis of PCOS, I really wasn't that surprised that something had gone wrong in my body. In fact, I was kind of surprised that it hadn't gone wrong earlier. And that same inner knowing, that intuitive voice of my internal body wisdom, just wondered what might happen if I unpicked all of those habits, took really, really good care of myself, radical responsibility for my own health and healing. Like, what would happen? Would my body be able to reverse things? To me, it just kind of seemed like a big old case of cause and effect. A simple equation of bad, unsupportive things for my health equals sickness. What might happen if I did good, supportive things for my body? Would that equal role reversal and good health? It kind of seemed logical, definitely possible. I thought I'd just give it a go. After all, it was untreatable and incurable, so what did I have to lose? If I ate well, managed my stress, started being kinder to myself, worked on my self-love, worth a go, right? So I started Googling. Now, usually Google is not something that I would necessarily advise for all of your health regimens, but considering I knew nothing about health, Google was a good place to start. And 5 years ago, there really wasn't the same level of information available about women's hormones as there is now, which was both a blessing and a curse. A curse because in a way it was far more challenging to find information. A blessing because there wasn't the same level of noise. And I really understand that if you've been diagnosed with PCOS or hormone condition, there's so much noise and sometimes it can just feel so overwhelming. Now, on said Google search, I found a blog that suggested eradicating gluten or dairy that could be beneficial. So I started there. If you haven't had a period for 8 months, your body likely feels, as mine did, so heavy and bloated and gross from the inside out. After a few weeks of really eradicating gluten, dairy from my diet, my body felt lighter. So I kept doing it. And thus began this kind of intuitive relationship with my body and my diet, trying out things to see what felt good and what didn't. I noticed that after eating lots of meat, again, my body would feel really bloated. So I decided to trial a plant-based diet. I am no longer purely plant-based, but at the time in healing my hormones, again, this felt good, so I kept doing it. It was literally like doing a science experiment on my own body. And this was a whole new experience in itself. I'd never really spent enough time seeing how my body felt. We are so used to living up in our heads that often we don't tune in to how our body feels after we've eaten a meal, whether we feel tired or energized in our body in the morning. And in the process of this, I was really learning to tune into my body, to feel my body, to be with my body, and to respect my body. You know, this was the journey of starting to work with my body as opposed to feeling like she was working against me. I was committed to helping her out. I acknowledged that I'd given her a pretty rough time over the last 10 years. And maybe I should just try and ease her suffering. What I realize now is that a lot of the time our body does actually know what to do. Often we just have to get out of the way and create the right environment for the body to do so. What I did next was the big challenge, giving up sugar. I had no idea at the time how much sugar impacts our hormones. The vast majority of women who struggle with PCOS are either insulin resistant as well or have dysregulated blood sugar. Now, this doesn't just come from sugar itself. It comes from our modern diets of a lot of processed food or a lot of junk food. A lot of our foods have a very high glycemic index, all of which creates this continual spiking and crashing of our blood sugar, which is really the enemy of our hormones. Our hormones are already doing so much that when our blood sugar is up and down all the time, it makes it so much more challenging for our reproductive and sex and menstrual hormones to stay balanced. Couple this with all of the stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol that are consistently running through our body, and we have ourselves a perfect little storm of hormonal imbalance. For the next 2 months, I detoxed my body from sugar. Oh, this was tough. I mean, the anger, the irritation, the frustration, the sadness, the despair, all the feels when the body is withdrawing from sugar. But in this process, I was becoming entirely committed to getting my period back. It was kind of like a project, a game, a quest, the holy grail of restoring my cycle. I wanted to feel good, and I damn well wanted my period back. In fact, I more or less promised my body that if she got me my periods back, I would love them forever and never complain about them again. I was extremely dedicated and disciplined and basically lived by the rule that if it was supportive to me getting my period back, I did it. If it was destructive and unsupportive to getting my period back, I didn't do it. I recommitted to a meditation practice that I'd slipped out of the routine of doing. I really tried to manage my stress levels because stress, along with blood sugar dysregulation, is one of the main contributing factors to PCOS. And this isn't just the stress of our day-to-day with our looming deadlines or our hurried hustle lifestyles, our continual go, go, go. This is the stress that we put ourselves under. The result of all of our not good enough stories, should be more stories, all of our body image issues, all of those times that we look in the mirror and don't like the way that we look, all of those moments that we don't feel fulfilled or feel like we should be doing something different with our lives, the anxiety, the endless need for validation and people-pleasing, the doing too much even when we're tired, the continual feelings like we should be more, like we should be doing more, like we should have more. It's so much pressure, and our body just doesn't know the difference between what's real and what is perceived. Now, in the run-up to me being diagnosed with PCOS, I had been putting my mind and my body under so much stress. Mainly as a result of the weight that I'd put on. I hated it. And in the grand scheme of women who struggle with PCOS, a couple of stone is really not that much. But I could tell the difference. I would poke and prod my body looking in the mirror. I'd walk past all shop windows, all car mirrors. In fact, any reflective surface where I could see my reflection would be another opportunity to punish myself and tell myself how disgusting I looked. I stopped dating. I didn't want anyone to see me naked. I mean, I didn't even want to see me naked. I would cry in changing rooms. I remember when my parents came to visit me in Australia and my mum asked why I was no longer wearing a bra. The reality was none of my bras fitted me anymore and they were painful to wear. So my lovely mum offered to take me bra shopping, and I remember being in the changing room with the bra fitter and just crying because I hated my experience so much. I hated having put on weight. I hated not feeling good in my body. And when the bra fitter told me how good the bra looked on me, I just didn't believe her. It's such a heartbreaking place to be, isn't it, ladies? And I really, really want all women to love their bodies. But having a hormone imbalance affects you on so many different levels. For me, it really dampened my confidence, and not receiving a period really made me feel disconnected from the part of me that felt feminine. It's like I didn't feel fully like a woman. But I recognized that none of this was helpful in getting my period back. Me beating myself up about my body or the way that I looked was not conducive to my own internal landscape. It wasn't part of the mindset that I needed. And in the process of taking radical self-responsibility, I also had to take ownership of the way that I was speaking to myself. Changing your narrative and really being your own best friend is essential when it comes to healing anything with your body. It kind of sounds cheesy, doesn't it? You know, that classic be your own best friend, but it is instrumental. That's why I say that healing your hormones really radically changes your entire relationship to your body, to yourself, and to your life. Because it's not just a case of eating well and you will be fine. You are re-navigating your entire experience of life. I decided that my poor level of self-talk was no longer appropriate, and I had to train myself to do things differently. I had to train myself to every time I looked in the mirror and something negative came up from my head. You look disgusting, you've put on so much weight, I hate this. Had to then be doused with another layer of, I know that you're doing your best. I choose to love you anyway. I am committed to loving you regardless. And I've got you, you know? And in the beginning, this feels really foreign and really tiring because it feels like you're trying to be multiple different people at the same time. But it does get easier. And really, the journey back to loving yourself is so beautiful and profound. This stuff was just as important as changing my diet. Honestly, just talking about the way that I used to speak to myself in my head or look at myself in the mirror, I just want to hug myself so hard. It's no way to live, ladies. You deserve so much better. You are so worthy of love. So if this has been you, I really do invite you to start doing things differently, more lovingly, more compassionately. Your body is always doing its best, and you are enough. Now, after about 5 months of all of this hard work, changing my diet and my lifestyle, and I do say hard work because it took a lot of effort, but it also felt very organic, like a natural process, because the whole time it's like you're getting closer and closer back to your natural alignment. Anyway, after all this months of hard work, I took myself on holiday to Bali. Here, I gave myself total freedom to unwind, to sit in cafes, to attend yoga classes, to do all the wonderful hippie things that I love. And after a couple of weeks, I did a transformational breathwork class. If you've ever done transformational breathwork, you'll know that it can be a major catalyst for trauma release. Now, what I experienced within this class was so deep and so profound that I think I'll save it for another podcast episode. Suffice to say, it was grueling, painful. I cried and cried and cried. I shook. My whole body trembled. In the evening, though, I had all this kind of dull aching and fireworking in my abdomen, just like a bit of a belly ache. And to cut to the chase, when I woke up the following morning, I went to the bathroom, and for the first time in a year, she was finally here. My period. A moment that I will never forget. Sat on the toilet, I cried all the happy tears. My hard work had paid off. I'd done it. I'd done something that was totally unthinkable. My body had found her way back to center. The science experiment that I'd run on my own body to unpick all the areas of my life which no longer felt in alignment or for my highest good, and replace it with a lifestyle that really worked in my favor. It had actually paid off. The experiment had worked. I went into this not even knowing if it was possible, having been told that what I was experiencing had no cure, no treatment. And here I was, 5 months later, with my period back. Wow. Our bodies are intelligent and powerful, beyond belief. What a moment. And for me, who knew nothing about health, it made it worth it. All of it. All of the frustrating, tearful phone calls that I'd made back home, wondering if I was ever going to have another period. Wondering if my body was ever going to be normal again. Wondering if I'd ever be able to manage my weight. Wondering if I'd even feel really good in my body again. Here I was, and it all made it worth it. Earlier that week, I had attended a women's circle, and I'd met this wonderful fellow English girl, Sophie, who is still a very special dear friend of mine to this day. Upon hearing me share my story, and at this point I hadn't yet got my period back, she came up to me and gave me the name of a Balinese healer, who she said that I needed to see. His waiting list was 3 months long, but I went back to check every single day to see whether they had a cancellation. And the day after I got my period back, they had space. Thank you, universe. Now, I wanted to still see him even though I'd got my period back because I was terrified that it was a fluke. It was somehow just a one-off and it would happen once and never come back again. Master Katut, when he put his hands around my pelvis, he said, "Ah, yes, very deep old pain." And when I shared with him my fears that my period would just be a one-off and never come back again, he said, No, you're fine now. And he told me just to keep meditating from my heart. Now, the reason that I have mentioned seeing this healer and sharing my experience of breath work is that I believe personally that there is so much more than the purely scientific when it comes to a woman's cycle, and indeed our bodies in general. Another teacher told me that if I wanted to work on my relationship to my cycle, I needed to also work on the relationship with my mother. Because where he comes from, our reproductive health carries imprints from our ancestral lineage. A woman's energetics are her physical landscape, her mental landscape, her emotional landscape, her energetic well-being. All sounds a little bit woo-woo when you're not used to speaking in that kind of way, but it makes sense, right? In our lives, everything touches everything. If we carry stress in some pockets of our lives, whether that is in the area of relationships with a friend or our partner or parents or siblings, it manifests itself within our mental landscape, within our emotional landscape, within our physical landscape. And when we are in the process of healing our bodies, often we are called to go into all of these different areas of our lives and really uproot every single stone. And that's what gets to be beautiful. It gets to bring healing to all areas of our life. This is the nature of holistic medicine or a holistic approach. It takes a broad picture of your entire life and brings everything back into balance and back into your unique, authentic alignment. This was the route that I had gone down to heal my PCOS without even intending to do so. It's like I brought my life, my whole mind, body, soul back into balance. And the return of my period was simply a byproduct of that. I think this is so important to take into consideration when we are healing our bodies. Our hormones, for example, are an ecosystem that work in harmony, and they function best when everything around them is in harmony too. It's not just a case of treating symptoms. It's changing the very environment in which our hormones are operating. Your average physician just doesn't have the time, capacity, or resources to sit down with you and ask you how you're feeling in the area of relationships or work, to ask you how aligned you feel within your life, or how you manage your emotions. So it's really up to us to dive deeper or seek additional support where it's needed in order to illuminate our blind spots or get us to look at our lives in a different way. We can only view our reality through the lens of our own experience. And sometimes we need to take the ceiling off what we think is possible. I have been asked so many times, what is the main thing or the one thing that I can do to heal my hormones or reverse my PCOS? The one thing you can do is likely change a whole manner of things. It's never just one thing. As you can see from my journey, there were so many different aspects of my life that I shifted and transformed. But the mindset that we needs to be full of determination and commitment to go deep into all of these different areas. On the back of that conversation with that healer, I really did work on the relationship with my mother. We always had a pretty good relationship. We are incredibly close and she's a wonderful woman. But within those deep, intimate, emotional relationships filled with unconditional love, there are often things which do need deep healing for our growth and our general transformation, and that gets to be a beautiful thing. Now, this is not stuff that your doctor will tell you, but it does make sense. We create stress in so many different ways, and to fully heal and liberate ourselves from the things that make us sick or take us out of alignment, it demands healing on so many different levels. Looking at our stories, looking at our traumas, releasing our traumas from the body. And you don't have to go to Bali. There are so many alternative therapies out there and different women who you can work with around your cycle, the energetics of your cycle, releasing trauma from the body. Acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda. So many different disciplines and areas of study carry so much wisdom in seeing and understanding and connecting to our bodies in a different way. Healing takes place through the layers, physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual, which is the journey that I take my clients on and is the basis for my brand Higher Love. Healing through the layers to take you into a higher alignment and resonance. And I tell you now, that was my story. That was what I did. I worked with my body by changing my diet. I worked with my mind by changing my self-talk. I worked to manage my emotions, and I prioritized and listened to my womb space. It's a communion with your feminine essence. And I tell you now, that is not something that we were taught at school. But it works, and I am a living, breathing, bleeding embodiment of that. Now, all of this was 5 years ago, and I can confirm that I've had a period every single month since it came back in 2017. Regular, on the whole painless, and gloriously welcome. Now, a year later, back in 2018, when I was back in the UK, I went to go and get my ovaries re-scanned and have my bloods and my hormones checked. No cysts, not even one. They were completely gone. My bloods and hormones were normal. Upon seeing my notes from Australia, my specialist endocrinologist back in the UK was amazed. She said along the lines of, "It's like you never had it. Your body is absolutely fine. There's no trace of PCOS. You simply just don't have it anymore. Whatever you've done," she said, "it's worked, so keep doing it." Now, what I had achieved within my body and my hormones and reclaiming my cycle inspired me to study a 1-year holistic health and nutrition coaching course with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, also known as IIN, as well as a further 7-month diploma in hormonal health. I wanted to understand on a deeper level how and what had happened in my body, and also understand how I could support women on a similar journey. I came to understand that what essentially I had done intuitively was stabilizing my blood sugar, decreasing inflammation, detoxing my liver, and improving my gut health. And in the resulting years that have passed, I've also understood how to deeply connect with our cycle in lots of different ways. Understanding our cycle as a cycle. Like literally, I used to just think that my period was either on or off. I didn't understand that every single day our bodies are doing something different. There's a different chemical balance in our bodies. As women, we're not intended to be the same every day. We are literally a different woman every day. Unfortunately, society is not very well set up for this experience. And our society has been built in a kind of hustle, go, go, go mentality, which actually doesn't suit our periods or our bodies that well. I've understood how important it is to work with our cycle, to take time off when we need it, and to not go against the grain when our hormone levels are low. And I will discuss this more in a further podcast, but I've understood how to support this cycle and different energetics within my social life, my work life. I've understood when I'm more creative, when I'm more rational and logical. And when we do this, we are turbocharging our hormonal regulation and balance, as well as our power as women. This is the gift of balancing your hormones. Your challenge is getting yourself there, upturning all of those stones and being so patient and kind to your body the entire way. The journey getting there gets to be the journey back to self. And I don't wish for this to sound rose-tinted. I'm well aware that many women have a really, really difficult time with this stuff, that it can carry on for months or years. But I can safely say that my PCOS was the biggest gift for my health and life. I got to fall in love with my body and my cycle on a whole new level. I learned to be radically self-empowered and take radical self-responsibility and ownership of my health. This is why it is literally a voyage of self-discovery, a re-education, a re-navigation with what you understand it to be a woman, to be inside your body, and to be you. To take away all the things that are not supportive to being you and to come back to your most authentic alignment and to get to have fun in the process. We really do have no idea how good our bodies can feel. Often we get so used to things that we just think that they're normal. And when we step beyond that, it can raise you up to levels that right now you might not even be able to imagine. I truly, truly want every single woman to feel that. A woman who is in ownership of her body and of her cycle is literally limitless. Now, if that doesn't feel available for you right now, know that that's okay too. This is a journey, this is a process. For now, let it simply be an invitation. There is so much incredible information out there for you, so much support. I'll put some of my favorite resources in the show notes. Books by Alyssa Vitti, creator of Flow Living, The Force of Nature, that is Lisa Lister, and the absolute menstrual icons that are Alexandra Pope and Shani Hugo Wurlitzer. Don't feel overwhelmed by the plethora of information out there. All of my information is in the show notes as well, if you feel that you need some help in distilling it all down. So there you have it, ladies. That's me sharing my story. And if you feel like you've benefited from this, I would love for you to take a moment to rate this podcast so that more women can find it. Share it with all the women in your life who it's relevant to, or share it on your socials so that other women with PCOS or those suffering from hormonal imbalances can find it as well. Sharing this work lights me up. It is the biggest permission slip back to your power. I'll be posting further hormone-related content and episodes in the next few weeks and months, so press follow if you want to stay updated. Until then, big love.